So that's presentation number one. I'm going to move to presentation two. I don't have a fancy video. And, you know, as your chairman for the past 12 years, my formal role has been to chair this annual meeting, be a member of the executive committee as its vice chairman, and also be able to quarterly have a column in Hoofbeats where I have shared my views over these 12 years in about 40 plus columns on how I see different areas of harness racing. Some of those have been well received. Others have not been received so well. But they have been provided to generate conversation in our industry. You know, columns such as uniform rules, owning a standardbred versus a thoroughbred, centralized management of our sport. Again, today I get the opportunity to address all of you with my views on our roles as directors in managing and assisting in the growth of our industry. Let's start with a look at our mission statement. There's always conversation about, you know, what do we do and what are our roles? Those are the 7 that are listed on our website for anyone to see who comes and wants to know about the USTA and what we do. I think, from my opinion, and I'll spend a couple of minutes on this, A, B, C, and D are areas of licensing people for the organization, formulating the rules of racing, maintaining and disseminating racing information and records, and serving as the registry for the standardbred breed. Let me deal with those for just a few minutes. I think we do a great job in those 4 areas. We embrace technology, and again, if you were at the IT subcommittee yesterday, we use this technology as a means to gather, disseminate information to our members, and in continuing to streamline processes, we've developed an excellent platform for our members and others to have access to a great deal of information. Our decision to embrace this technology early in its development has placed us in a best-class position. Now we use technology almost exclusively and the internet to save our members time and money when interacting with us, and has allowed us to restructure our organization several times over the past 20 plus years that I have been a director. Moving from a staff of 79 in the year 2000 to a current staff level of 47, that's a reduction of 32 people in this 18-19 year period. Our team manages more information and provides more services to our members and others than 20 years ago. Our embrace of technology and hiring some very talented people has allowed us to accomplish a great deal. This is a wonderful statistic and one we should all be proud of. I want to recognize our IT staff for these accomplishments, and I don't know, am I going to get, I don't know, am I getting that? I'm not going to get that. I'm going to read it to you, right? Hold on. I have it here. So we have a department headed up by Sherry Anton Moore. And she is here today. We have 2 others here today, tech support, Nicole Borders and Alex Cully. The other group is supporting us either at the office, even though it is Sunday, or taking an occasional day off. We have Igor Efremenko, Gail Pastorek, Shamala Shindi, Nate Hawthorne and David Jackson, Chris Menard, and Mark McGroarty. We have a web development team that includes Derek Brigner, Autumn Bistel, and Rob Fabiano, and digital consultant for the New Look initiative of Anthony Koski. This group manages all of this technology for us, and as we've seen in the last couple of days and in this presentation, are doing a hell of a job in moving us forward and having the youth of the country see something that has technology enhancements and things that they are looking for. So again, I want to thank those people for all of the work that they have done in taking us forward. Now, this leaves us with E, F, and G, which we can put back on there. I'm going to touch on integrity of harness racing and the humane treatment of standardbreds for just a few comments at this point. As to integrity, you all know that the USTA is in the process of challenging the medication usage for our industry that's been proposed in Congress. There are issues with that bill, and we are spending money and huge amounts of time in trying to be part of the defeat of that bill. The uniformity that they want to treat thoroughbreds the same as standardbreds, a bill that is not funded and therefore would throw the cost of all of this to our horsemen and us and everyone associated with the sport, and in dealing with race day medication and Lasix. Those are three of the main elements, and I think when Mike Tanner was asked by one of the congressmen or senators, well, if we got rid of Lasix, we said it was okay, would you be able to support this bill? And Mike said, I don't know, to quote him, I don't think so. There are many issues with that bill, and we are right in the firing line on dealing with that as far as the integrity. Also, the second item has to do with just taking care of the welfare of horses, the humane treatment, and you will hear, you may have heard yesterday if you were at the executive committee, you will hear later this morning from Dave Reed about the Strategic Transition Alliance, which again is another step forward by the USTA to get some traction into how are we best going to take care of horses once they retire from the racetrack. So I will spend most of my comments on the last item, which is promoting the sport of harness racing and the standardbred. So what's our role as directors? I think our role, certainly one of them, has been to implement changes in our industry. While the ongoing rule changes seem at times to be routine, mundane, nothing really changes in the sport if we don't continue to manage, modify, and change our rules to be consistent with what is going on in the environment. We've passed major rule changes that have and continue to bring meaningful change to our sport. I've got a few listed here, and I could certainly spend a lot of time, but the implementation of artificial insemination and the shipping of semen, from the lip tattoo of our horses to neck freeze branding to now microchips. We have always had complaints from fans and even members of, of our industry, and now we've moved to microchipping. Continuing revision in the definition of prohibited drugs, electronic eligibility, whipping rules, sulky standards, online entries. We've continued to make rules to modernize our industry, and that's a major part of our responsibility. So when people say, and sometimes I've even said it, we go over these rules, we discuss them, that's a main part of our job, is to continue to modify and change and update the rules that govern our industry. Some say the racing jurisdictions, well, they don't have to go by our rules, but in the end, if we look over time, once we pass the rules, we disseminate them to the jurisdictions, we communicate with the jurisdictions, and in many, many cases, maybe I'd say most cases, over a period of time, they implement our rules as rules for their jurisdiction. So we do make inroads, and to say that our rules only govern the fairs is really a misnomer. It's just a different process to get them taken under consideration by the racing jurisdictions. When I look at the composition of our board and the dialogue from time to time that 60 board members is too many, I step back and ask myself what was intended when the organization was formed by the founding fathers, and there was a little note to that in Russell's comments. Seems to me they wanted representation from throughout the industry. They felt the racing operations, the racetracks should have representation, and the members should have representation. And so the balance was 20-40. We have kept that 60, but we've moved things around within our organizations when certain racetracks opened in districts that we had to give them representation, and we moved the number and we reduced it in some. I've volunteered many times to reduce California from 3 to 2, but nobody's said, sure, okay, we don't need yours yet. So we continue to do that, and we will continue to do that. Now, the question, so why is 60 too much? I, for one, don't think it's too much. The question I have is how do we best use your talents? And that's the key to how we move forward and become successful in the future. So what's our role? Why are we here today? And I think each of you could tell your story about how you got involved in harness racing. And you had a family member that was a driver, a trainer, owners, whatever it may be. Your dad took you to the racetrack and you fell in love with it. My beginning was, I don't know if it was any different than some of you. My dad took me to the racetrack, but he took me to the thoroughbreds. I got involved in harness racing because Governor Reagan at that time moved harness racing from a daytime sport to a nighttime sport. So I could go to harness racing at night and college in the daytime. It worked. And from that, in 1984, I bought my first horse. That was the beginning. I don't know if it spiraled up or spiraled down after that, but then I bought a breeding farm. And then I bred horses for 15 years. Charlie Myers, who was a good friend of mine and a client, asked me to take a position on the USTA board in 1988. He was on the board at that time. He said, it'd be good for you. So I did. That was 30 years ago. And then chairman for the last 12 years. So somehow I have become so infatuated, and every once in a while, my wife doesn't ask me, but somebody says to me, how many horses have you owned over these years? So I go to Pathway, and I look at it, and I say, a bunch. And so, it's a love that we have. Many of us, it's a love, because to get into the industry, and if you're in racetrack management, whatever it is, you said at some point to your district, I want to be your representative at the USTA. So you took that step, because we have 16,000 members. So why are you 60 here? Because you've taken that step forward, and you want to do something that others have not wanted to do. And that's a great accomplishment in itself, that I want to do more. And if you didn't want to do more, you wouldn't be here, or you shouldn't be here. That's for you to answer. But that's where we are today, and that's why we need your skills to move us forward in all of our endeavors. But let me pick up on a comment that Russell made. You would think I hadn't seen that video before. After 2008, casino gaming revenue replaced pari-mutuel handle as the most significant source of revenue industry-wide. This should be our starting point for discussion. Let's not kid ourselves of this fact. How are we going to manage expectations, grow our sport with this new revenue structure that is likely to be with us for a long time? Our on-track handle continues to drop, and fan base is not growing. So what should we be doing? Russell made a few comments about that, but there was a time when I was a supporter of working towards marketing efforts to convert slot players to racetrack bettors. As I learned more about the structure, I learned that in many cases, our purses receive more money from a dollar bet on a slot machine than from a dollar bet at the racetrack. So my view changed somewhat. I said, well, if we move all the slot players to the racetrack, we're now going to have less money. So that's not a good model for us going forward. So we have to figure out how to manage our expectations and the things that we need to do. Now, talking about casino gaming, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but we controlled gaming in this country, legalized gaming. And as casinos started to expand through the Indian casinos initially, and then the casino operators from Nevada, they wanted now to expand into other areas other than Las Vegas and Atlantic City. So they needed an entree. Communities weren't prepared to just let them open casinos, so they needed, a place a partner to make it happen. Well, we were legal, so we started to make deals with them. They needed us. They would not have made it without it. Now, we were looking at, again, competitive gaming and other things. Our sport was not growing at the same levels because of all kinds of issues, so we made deals for us to share in the revenues that they would be generating. And we made commitments to those casino operators and to the legislatures about what would happen. So one of the things that we were going to do is we were going to expand our sport. We were going to take some of this money and develop new customers, bringing them to the racetrack. So this has been more difficult than anticipated, as our product continues to have more challenges, as customer entertainment and gaming tastes continue to change, and we have not been able to keep our product interesting enough to draw significant new patrons to our racetracks. We now have the additional challenge to satisfy the expectations of the legislatures and also run a business that makes sense to our new casino partners and our customers. And this is where the Horsemen and the USTA come in together. Our horsemen in these areas, the owners, the breeders, trainers, and drivers, all USTA members, with support from the USTA, must continue to put on the best show at the racetrack than we can and continue to walk the halls of the legislature to keep in front of those rule makers. And again, I had my stuff done, and then when I looked at Russell, I said, oh, I guess I have to incorporate some of what he said. We must give our gamblers better choices as they look for fuller field sizes and lower takeout. I saw something in HRU somewhere just this last week, a quote from Mark Lowy about expanded wagering offerings to bring more excitement and wagering value to their patrons. That's a step in the right direction. Also, the gamblers don't look favorably on 30+ takeout percentages. We have to look at that. We have to figure out with the legislature and the rule makers to be more competitive, because gamblers look for their best chance of winning. And if they can find, even in racing, a 25% or a 20% takeout on bets, and somebody else wants 25 or 30, well, they're going to the 20 to 25. Gamblers are looking for, where is that spread? Where is my best chance? And therefore, we have to provide that if we want people to bet on our races. If we can grow the number of gamblers, we can grow the number of owners. I would be an example. I started as a gambler, I became an owner. And I can't be an owner and a gambler, because then you don't have any money. And so you have to balance where you want to put your money. Trying new bets will stimulate interest in the sport. I'll name a few, and I like to say Cal Expo is a leader in some of those. They floated with Chris Schick the idea of a Bal-Cal 4 years ago, which was favorably received. And just last week, in the thoroughbreds, they introduced an East-West Pick 5, again, stimulating people to bet across tracks. And that is part of what we need to do. We need to encourage the gamblers to be able to go to Ohio and Pennsylvania and bet those races the same night, within the same time frame, so that we get that exposure. It's terrible for me when I look at some of the handles in some of our slot tracks where we do $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 a night and we run 12 races. That's not going to get a gambler to play. And if that's the decision, we don't care about the gambler, that's a decision. But we should be looking to attract gamblers as well as owners into our business. Occasionally, I hear some of our casino partners would be happy without us. Well, maybe it's true, and so what do we do about it? What we do about it is make ourselves more significant. And how do we make ourselves more significant? We do it by being more creative in the areas in which will benefit everyone. I'm not one of those that believes the legislature is going to come in tomorrow and say, you know, you're not producing enough. You didn't meet your expectations with us. I don't think they're going to do that. But if we just continue to take our contractual revenue and not reinvest in how we're going to develop and market our product, then we are giving them the opportunity to challenge us and say, we're not living up to our responsibilities. Last week, Yonkers management closed Yonkers for night racing a day that they had some snow. Now, the thoroughbreds raced that day, but management didn't want to race at night. Well, out of that, you could say, well, shit, that was no good. We lost a night. Well, Joe Feraldo didn't take it as just that. He went at them because management and horsemen have to, in some fashion, work together. And if they're going to arbitrarily make a decision when nobody else in that area closed their racing, that's not right. There was no discussion. And so Joe took him to task. Those are the things that we have to do. We can't just, again, take what we're given and move on, because if we do, they're going to push harder. And so we have to have, again, a seat at the table for all of these things that are going to be going on. We want to contribute, and if we lose sight of that, we're going to lose. So how many more states are going to legalize gaming? From the time I started writing this a few weeks ago, I got a whole list of them. Nashville may be interested in gaming. If that moves forward, how will that impact Kentucky? I also read that Indiana is discussing expanded casino gaming with live dealers. What impact will that have on Ohio? What will the impact of sports betting be? Well, we don't know yet, but it's going to expand all over the country in the next half a dozen years for the states that want to do it. We have to have a seat at the table. We have to have a piece of that revenue. The genie, as you say in various things, is out of the bottle, and expanded gambling is not over by a long shot. One of the most important issues we have to answer for ourselves is how do we remain relevant in a sport and gaming arena with all of the changes occurring in both sports and gaming. Dictionary definition of relevant is having significant and important bearing on the matter at hand. I found some data back in 2015 which listed popular sports. Well, we were tied for 15th. Not terrible. But we were tied with men's tennis, swimming, bowling, and women's soccer. We need to be better than that. We need to be up higher. So, you know, actually, I was going to talk about my interaction with Ohio, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So is all of this, again, new racetracks? And by the way, Georgia is the latest that hit at least my news, and I know about 18 months ago there was some comment about Georgia that I heard in a podcast, and I said, Georgia? Racing in Georgia? And now, last week, yes, they're talking about it, and the governor's not against it anymore. So they said, yeah, we want to have racing. But we can't have racing without a casino, because we need the casino money to support the operation of a racetrack? Well, again, you have to be able to have partners and be able to work with each other to make that happen. So is it a zero-sum game? Do we just move the money around? You know, when Ohio was great, and I was racing there and shipping semen to California, they had a great program. Then Indiana came on the horizon. Ohio, you know, limped along for many years. Horsemen moved. Then, and Indiana flourished. Now Ohio has a great program again. Listening to the money they're spending on marketing yesterday in the marketing program is incredible. And the inroads they're making and all of the good things that are happening. In Indiana, who was breeding 3,400 mares, is now down to 25 or 6. So is it a zero-sum game? Do we just move the money around, and every time another state authorizes a racetrack and a casino, we just have fewer horses to go around? We have to look at that. We have to be prepared. What's going to occur next week, maybe, when the Meadowlands subsidy kicks in? I'm sure they're going to get more horses. So where are they going to get them from? They're going to get them from somewhere. Well, we only have one population of horses. So therefore, it would seem to me that the field sizes are not going to go up, but are going to go down. They may go up at the Meadowlands, and they'll go down somewhere else. One thing for sure is we have a horse shortage now, and may very well continue to have a horse shortage for years to come. So what happens if we have smaller fields and larger purses? Well, if you're an owner, trainer, and a driver, you're going to make more money because there's less competition. But what happens to the gamblers? It seems to me they move on. They don't want shorter fields. They want larger fields with bigger opportunities. Even the little gambler I am, and I do a lot of mine at Santa Anita, they used to have 9, 10, 11 horse fields all the time. You could hit a $1,000 trifecta for $1. Today, you couldn't hit a $1,000 trifecta, period, because they have 6, 7 horse fields. You just can't do that. Well, that's not what a gambler wants. A gambler wants the opportunity to make a score. So I'm waiting. Let's see. Let's look at my last little chart. Okay. So this one, I don't know that it scares me, but it's just factual information that, again, you can manipulate numbers, and I didn't do this to manipulate the results. I just asked TC to give me this information from 1999, 2009, and 2018. And you can see between 1999 and 2009, there was not, the amount of tracks basically stayed the same. Purses went up, and I think purses went up more because we got casino money. But the part that is more disturbing, or disturbing to me, is from 2009 to 2018. Our membership went down by 25%. Our parimutuel tracks went down from 40 to 34. Individual horses racing, and again, to be on this list, you had to have one start. So again, it's not totally representative of how many horses raced. You went from 25,000 to 17,000. Yet the purses paid went down in that period as well. All right, purses went down, but there are less people getting the money, so the earnings per member, I used member of the USTA rather than people who necessarily own, because we have members that don't own horses, that went up. Well, that can't continue. We can't go from 34 parimutuel tracks down to 30 or 28. It won't work, because we'll lose too many members and there'll be less and less breeding. So we'll continue to contract. And we don't want to end up, as Russell said, to be a, what was the word? A fun sport for somebody, a leisure sport. A hobby. A hobby, yes. We don't want to be that. So we've got two roles. The two roles are to be a director in your district and to be a director here. And in the district, you have to be leaders. You have to work and stimulate your people at the tracks to work towards how do we put on a better show, what kind of things can we work with management, and I don't care if it's casino owned or not, that's part of our job there at the local level. And then we at the USTA help initiate programs and support the various districts and try and put together programs that will benefit. You know, the guaranteed pools, which was formed here at the USTA, and again, there was a recent summary showing how much it's grown so much this year. That was formed here, we got tracks to buy in, and we manage that. And we can do things like that, but we need the tracks to want to be part of it, and I think a lot of them do. One last thing, you know, what is going to bring our future customers to us? What do they want? And Russell touched on it. Look, I'm with a firm that has 140 employees. Coincidentally, last week we did a survey of our employees. We had an outside organization develop the questions about things they liked in the areas of development, communication, interaction, all the different things, benefits. We think we know what they wanted. And some of my partners says, we don't want to do this survey. We're not going to like what the results are. I said, well, if you don't know if there's things they don't like and we don't know what they are and we don't address them, they're going to go somewhere else at some point. So we got to know. Well, we took this survey. It had a lot of good things in it. I have a stack of analysis by the company that did it. And there's things that we knew were likely to be on there, and they were. Well, so now they've told us, this is where you're not performing to our expectation. So now we're developing some programs and plans to address it. We can't make 100% of our 140 employees happy, that's for sure. But we can address the things where we see there's a disconnect between what I'll call our employees, our customers, and the organization. And I think that's what Russell was talking about. We need to see what people are, you know, focus groups and different things to find out what they want. Because I agree, we can't continue to put the same product on the racetrack and expect people to want it the way it is. I don't know what the answer is, but we need to find out that answer and be able to help direct, you know, the future of our organization and how we present our product to the outside. So my last question is, are you prepared to be part of that? And I know your answer is yes. So I thank you for your time today, and we're going to move forward. Thank you.